Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be covering the Florida Gators preview matchup with Arkansas. This is kind of like a follow-up to Georgia's to the game that they lost against Georgia. My post-game reaction, well, not really post-game because it was a couple of days later, but you know what I mean. My reaction to Florida's loss to Georgia this past Saturday. This is a must-win game for Florida. I know it kind of sounds crazy going up against a 2-6 team in Arkansas, but if you look at Florida's schedule after this game, it's on the road at LSU, on the road at Missouri, and on the road, and excuse me, back home, senior day against Florida State. And those are three probable losses for Florida right there. Um, this is probably Florida's best chance of making a bowl game. I said it before the South Carolina game. If you're going to make a bowl game, you have to, at minimum, beat South Carolina and Arkansas because both of those teams are pretty awful. And Arkansas right now is their players are kind of like in desperate mode for their head coach Sam Pittman. You know, it kind of seems as if he might be on the hot seat after this year, considering how he started off hot. Well, not necessarily hot, but the good year that Arkansas had in 2021, where they're actually 8-4 and actually a respectable football team. And then the last couple of years, they go 6-7, losing record, and then they're in danger of missing a bowl game. Which even if they do beat Florida, I think they're still on the verge of missing a bowl game. Um, I have Arkansas's schedule put up in the next tab, but we're not gonna go over that yet. So this is kind of a desperate game for both teams just to get a victory, and it's kind of a strength on strength matchup. Um, Last night I was watching the stream with Gators Breakdown with Dave Waters and his co-host. I think it was Will Manor. I apologize if I'm getting the name wrong. He kind of broke this down, I thought, pretty accurately. Arkansas is a team that performs better on the road than they do at home, and Florida is a team that performs better in the swamp at home than they do outside of it. Billy Napier, I just looked it up, or actually, I just did the math rather. He is he's 2-8 away from the swamp, whether it be a neutral game like against Georgia or a bowl game against Oregon State, or just completely on the road. You know, lost to ten last year, lost to Tennessee, lost to Vanderbilt and Florida State all on the road, and then lost in the Vegas Bowl to Oregon State. Then he lost twice on the road this year to Kentucky and Utah, and then lost to Georgia in the annual Florida Georgia matchup. So he's 2-7. Yeah, that makes him 2-7, not 2-8, as I erroneously calculated, away from the swamp. But in the swamp, he's I think he's 8-2. You know, Utah, USF, Eastern Washington. Sorry about that. I'm getting notifications. Eastern Washington, Missouri, South Carolina. That was last year, and this year McNeese, Charlotte, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. So he's 9-2 at the Swamp. So it's kind of something that's got to give matchup between Florida and Arkansas, being that Arkansas, like I said, is better on the road than and Florida's better at home. As you see right here, the matchup predictor has it like according to ESPN analytics, it's like split right down the middle. I don't have an issue with it being split right down the middle. I think it kind of shows that, these are two meddling programs, one maybe worse than the other one in Arkansas at the very least, considering the fact that Florida does have somewhat of a brighter future in the sense of, at the very least, they have an elite recruiting class coming in next year. As of right now, while it still remains, and Florida's still looking to add to that. I've already talked about that before. I'm not going to get into it. So there's the analytics aspect for ESPN. There's the leading yards for receivers. Ricky Pearsall, who's a stud, leading Florida with 718 receiving yards. Marshall Johnson still the starter for Florida at 9 carries for 520 yards, and Graham Mertz playing better than what a lot of people thought he would play this year. I think he just needs more help around him at Florida, and I think you would see better numbers for him right now, which is why I hope he does come back for Florida next year. I made a video about that back in the summer saying that, you know what, even if you're a Florida fan, you're not that sold on Graham Mertz. Both sides kind of need each other for the next couple of years. If Graham Mertz is thinking about making it to the NFL, he probably should come back one more year and try to elevate his draft stock. Ricky Pearsall did that this year, and I think he went from being possibly a low end pick to maybe a mid round pick by the way he's performed this year. improving his receiving totals and improving his route running and, making more plays this year. I think he's elevated his draft stock a little bit. I'm not going to say he's like a second or third rounder, but I would say maybe he's elevated himself to possibly being a fourth or fifth round pick. So, shout out to Ricky Pearsall. Uh, Here it is, the team stats for both teams. Arkansas, 305.9 yards a game. Florida, 411.4. Arkansas offensively is kind of like the Iowa Hawkeyes of the SEC. The Iowa Hawkeyes just fired their offensive coordinator. Well, announced that they're going to be part ways their offensive coordinator after this year. But quite frankly, that's something they should have done years ago. Arkansas fired their offensive coordinator recently, Dan Enos, former offensive coordinator for the Miami Hurricanes, a little while back. He was let go by Arkansas a couple of weeks ago, so they're going to be making some changes offensively, which is kind of a scary thing to think about if you're a Florida fan, because now you're coming in with something new as opposed to not getting Arkansas when they still had it. So it's going to be something to watch out for if you're part of Florida. But however, what should help Arkansas is the fact they're going up against a Florida Gator defense that has not played well over the last 3 or 4 games since they lost to Kentucky a couple of weeks ago. That game against Kentucky kind of broke the mental of Florida's defense, because after having a good performance, having good performances against Tennessee, and not giving up a lot of, and even having a respectable performance against Utah, that Kentucky game kind of just, I think, broke the will of the team, because having the ball run in you the way that they did, having Ray Davis just break the will of the defense, and having almost a Heisman day going up against Florida's defense. I think Florida has not recovered since then. I'm still not giving up on Austin Armstrong. I think you can see some areas where Florida is better where they were, the last, in 2022. They're certainly better, a hell of a lot better than what they were in 2020. But I'm still not ready to give up on Austin Armstrong's defense just yet. I want to see what he does when he has this giant recruiting class, coming in, and when he has guys a little bit more familiar with the system, because it is year one for him as opposed to what could have been year two under Patrick Toney, and I don't think Florida would be performing under Patrick Toney the way they are under Austin Armstrong. So here's the last 5 for Arkansas, and here's Florida's last 5. Now I'm going to bring up their schedules right now as part of the sorry about that, as part of the analysis. So Arkansas won their first 2 games against WCU. I don't know what WCU stands for, but I know KENT means Kent State. That's actually Nick Saban's alma mater, Kent State. They won those 2 games, but they have lost every game since then. They're on a 6-game losing streak. Not only, if you're looking at where it says CONF, that's conference record. Not only are they winless against conference opponents, they're 0-5, but they're winless against the Power 5 in general, because BYU is part of the Big 12. They joined the Big 12 earlier this year, so Arkansas is winless against Power 5 football teams. They have not won a single Power 5 football game at all, and if you're Florida, you do not want to be a part of that list. So Florida will be playing Arkansas at noon on ESPN2. They're going to be debuting their black uniforms. I'm not really a fan of the black uniforms, especially being that the game is going to be played at noon, so the sun will probably be at its highest. So something that could possibly be a thing of concern for the Florida team, because as us Florida fans know, sorry, I had to blow someone off my screen. As Florida fans know, the heat down here can get really crazy, and especially when it gets to around noon. So having those black jerseys might come back and hurt Florida in terms of hydration and cramping, and could cause some heat issues for the team. And here it is for Florida. Obviously, as you can see right here, 5-3 record. A 5-3 record. One on the road at South Carolina, last victory, and then the rest of the victories came at home in the swamp. McNeese, Tennessee, Charlotte, and Vanderbilt. So Florida will be back at home and Saturday. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. This will be Florida's best attempt to get bowl eligibility and get some more practices towards the end of the year. Then they're going to be on the road the next couple of weeks at LSU and Mizzou, and before they finish it off with their annual in-state rivalry with Florida State. So It's it's going to be a pivotal game for both football teams. I think the players kind of want to show the program that they're for Arkansas that they want to still play hard for Sam Pittman and try to keep him around for one more year. And Florida needs it for obvious reasons that I've mentioned, not only to turn the page from last week's beatdown against Georgia, but also to possibly end the year with a respectable season. I said before the South Carolina game that if you're going to be bowl eligible, you're going to have to beat South Carolina and Arkansas minimum. And if you wanted it to be a good year, you're going to have to steal a victory against either Georgia, LSU, Missouri, or Florida State. Well, Georgia, you had no chance, and I said it beforehand. And I would say if there were two winnable games, I would say Mizzou won and then LSU second. But you know, I'm not really sure if Florida is capable of doing that. So best hope for Florida is probably 6-6 this year, like they were last year. And hopefully they can win their bowl game and finally break this 6-7 train that they've drawn up over the last couple of years, going 6-7 going 6-7 in back-to-back years. And not only will a victory bring bowl eligibility for Florida, but it will improve Napier's win total against the conference. Last year he was 3-5 in conference play. He's already had 3 wins this year: Vanderbilt, South Carolina, and Tennessee. So a victory against Arkansas will, at worst, bring him to 4-4. So you got to have some positives out of this year. So pivotal game for Florida, pivotal game for Arkansas to a certain extent, and for Arkansas, you don't. I don't think they're going to make a bowl game, even if they do beat Florida, because they're going to be against Auburn, and we've seen how badly Arkansas is at home. Lost to BYU and lost to Mississippi State, which they didn't even score a touchdown in that game. They still got Auburn, and they're going to be on, and they're going to have Mizzou, um, 2 of the next 3 weeks after Florida. So I'm not really sure if Arkansas is going to make a bowl game, even if they do beat Florida. But at the very least, if there is a winnable game for Arkansas over these next 4 games, it would be FIU number one and then Florida number two. Auburn's playing a little bit better than what some people would have hoped for under year one of Hugh Freeze, and Mizzou is probably the biggest upriser of any college football, Power Five football team this year. So, Arkansas, Florida, it's going to be a pivotal matchup for both teams. It's kind of a must-win for both teams, and you know, it's going to be. I don't think it should be a difficult game for Florida to win. I'm going to predict Florida wins this one. I'm not going to say they blow them out. I don't believe that Florida is really going to blow anybody out. I'll say Florida wins 27-20, get bowl eligibility, give Billy Napier a career high in terms of conference wins in the SEC. So that is my prediction: 27-20 Florida. And thanks for watching.